Now that you're comfortable with numbers, let's take it one step further. In this video, you're going to learn about if statements. An if statement is a way to run certain code only if a condition is met. Let's use that grading example from the last video, where we calculated someone's average grade. Let's say if they pass the class, we want to run a message that says, "Congratulations, you passed the course." And if they fail the class, we want to say, "Sorry, but you failed the course." We can do that using if statements. To get started, I'm going to be creating a new file, as always. I'm going to be creating it in the Node Basics folder. Let's go ahead and call this file if.js. There's no better way to show you what an if statement looks like than to write one. So, follow along. We're going to create one variable first. So I'm going to use the var keyword because it's a new variable we're creating. And I'm going to call the variable average grade with a capital G for camel casing. Right on the same line, I also want to give this variable a value. So I'm going to use the equal sign. Let's choose 92 for the person's average grade. That's pretty good. That's an A- or an A. Now down below, let's go ahead and write out an if statement. In this case, if the person's grade is above a 70, we're going to say, "Congratulations, you passed the course." Else, if the person's grade is below a 70, we're going to say, "Sorry, you failed the course." The first step is to use the if keyword. Just like the var keyword, the if keyword is a reserved word by JavaScript. It has a special meaning. Right after the if keyword, I want you to open and close a set of parentheses. Everything inside of here is going to be the conditions that need to pass for the code to run. In this case, I want to see if the average grade variable, I'm going to reference the variable by its name, is greater than, the greater than sign is 2 keys to the right of the M key on your keyboard. You have to use Shift to get to it. So if average grade is greater than, and I'm just going to type the number 70, now we have our condition. If this passes, what do we want to do? To specify what you want to do, you need to use the curly braces. You can find the opening curly brace by using the Shift key and pressing the key just to the right of the P key. And just to the right of that key is the closing curly brace. So I'm going to open and close a set of curly braces. Now, the good formatting for if statements involves something that looks like this. By simply hitting the Enter key, you can see Sublime Text knows what to do. It keeps the opening curly brace on the same line as the if statement. It puts the closing curly brace on a line by itself, and it indents you 4 spaces where you can type the code to run if that condition passes. In this case, all I'm going to do is call console.log. I'm going to open and close my parentheses and put a semicolon at the end. And then inside, I'm going to type out, "You passed the class. Way to go." Perfect. Now, one thing you'll notice. The if statement line and the line that closes the curly braces, they don't actually require a semicolon. So, while most lines do, the if statement doesn't, so when you're writing your if statements, you can simply leave them off. As a general rule of thumb, anytime you're opening and closing curly braces, the semicolons are not necessary. The individual statements, though, still require semicolons, so JavaScript knows what to execute. All right, I'm going to run this from the terminal by typing node space if.js. And you can see, "You passed the class, way to go," prints to the screen. Excellent. This is all it takes to write great if statements. Now, we can also go ahead and change this to 62. Rerun the program. And you can see nothing prints out. Let's go ahead and add an else statement onto the if statement to print "You failed the class." Adding an else statement is pretty easy. On the same line as your curly braces, all you have to do is type else, and then open and close a set of curly braces. no condition is required because the else statement is going to run if the if statement fails. Inside of here, I'm simply going to call console.log you failed the course. Sorry. Excellent. Now, if you rerun the program after saving the file, of course, you can see you failed the course prints to the screen. Perfect. So the if statement requires a clause, and the else statement doesn't because it runs if the if statement's clause fails. In this case, 62 is not greater than 70, so this code does not run, and the else statement code does. One more piece to if statements. There's also an else if. Else if lets you specify another condition to run if any previous conditions fail. Let me explain that in terms of this example. Let's say if someone gets a 100%, I want to say you got a perfect score. If someone gets between a 70 and a 99, I'm going to say you passed the class, way to go. And else, if they failed the course, I'm going to say you failed the course, sorry. To add this in, I'm going to simply, up at the top, add a few lines. First, I want to type the if keyword to get started. Next, I'm going to specify my condition. If average grade is equal to 100. When you want to compare two values and see if they're equal, you use the equal sign, but you have to type it 3 times. 1, 2, 3, just like that. If the average grade is equal to 100, I'm going to add my curly braces so I can specify the code I want to have run. Console.log you got a perfect grade. Awesome. Now, we're not quite done yet. If you notice, we actually have 2 if statements. Let me go ahead and change this to 100, rerun the program, and show you what's going to happen. In this case, you got a perfect grade prints, but you passed the class, way to go, also prints. Now, that might be fine, but let's go ahead and use an else if to have only one or the other print. To do that, I'm going to move this if keyword onto the same line as the curly brace from the previous if statement. Then I'm going to type the else keyword and add a space. Now you'll notice this new structure. We have the first if statement, which runs if the average grade is 100%. Next up, if the average grade is greater than 70, we're going to run this, but this is only going to run if the first one doesn't. Lastly, if neither of the 2 previous statements pass, we're going to run this code. With else ifs and else statements, only one of these is ever going to run. You're not going to have 2 run. To prove that, we can head over to the terminal, rerun our program, and there you go. You got a perfect grade, prints to the screen. There's a couple other ways you can compare numbers as well. Right now, 70 actually won't print this message. That's because we're using the greater than sign. So it has to be greater than 70. To fix that, you can put an equal sign after it, which stands for greater than or equal to. You can also use a less than sign and a less than or equal to. Lastly, you know the equality up here. You can say if 2 things aren't equal by putting an exclamation mark in front of 2 equal signs. If the average grade is not 70, it could be 69 or 71, as long as it's not 70. Let's switch this back to the original one, which is greater than or equal to. Awesome. One more thing before we head into the challenge, and that is using what's called logical operators. That sounds like a fancy word. It's really just this. If something passes and something else passes. If the name variable is equal to Andrew and the grade is equal to 100. Now, you can use and, if name is Andrew and grade is 100. You can also use or, if the name is equal to Andrew or the name is equal to Jen. To do that, all you have to do is, just after your first condition, type the double ampersand key, which is Shift 7, and that stands for AND. In this case, if average grade is 100 and name is equal to Andrew. We don't have a name variable created, so I'm going to add one right here. Now, this statement should only print if the name does equal to Andrew. In this case, it does. If I run the program, you can see you got a perfect grade prints. If I change the name to Jen and rerun the program, you can see that you pass the class prints, not you got a perfect grade. What happens here is the first statement gets run. Is the average grade equal to 100? Yes. And is the name equal to Jen? No. So the whole statement fails and it moves on to the next one. You can also use OR. In this case, you use the two vertical bars. Those are just to the right of the curly brace key on your keyboard, and you have to use the Shift key to get to it. This reads, is the average grade equal to 100, or is the name equal to Andrew? So in this case, Andrew is always going to pass the class. If the person's name is not Andrew and they got 100, I guess they could pass too. Let's rerun this. And you can see that you got a perfect grade prints. That's because, well, name isn't equal to Andrew, average grade is equal to 100. So the condition passes. You only need one of the conditions to pass for the OR clause to pass. With the AND clause, which is two ampersands, you need both to pass for the statement to run. All right, here's the challenge. First up, delete everything in if.js. What I want you to do is create a new variable called friend, and go ahead and set it to one of your friends' names. Then I want you to create an if statement and list out some of your friends' names in the condition. So if the name is equal to Jen, or if the name is equal to Mike, or if the name is equal to Corey, just a few of my friends, then I want to say, hello, friend. Next up, in the else if clause, I'm going to name a few people that maybe I don't like so much, in which case I'll just say, hey. Lastly, in the else clause, I want you to say, hello, stranger, if the name passes none of those conditions. So go ahead and create a friend greeter using some of your friends' real names in the condition. Run the program from the terminal, and if everything goes well, perfect. Take a moment to pause the video, create the application, and then click play. All right, here's how I could have done it. First up, I need to create that name variable. I'm going to set it equal to a friend's name. In this case, I'm going to use Mike. The next thing I need to do is get started with my if statement. To do that, I'm going to use the if keyword. Up next, I need my opening and closing parentheses, and inside of here, I'm going to put my condition. The condition for this statement is going to be if the name equals Mike, or the name equals Jen. If the name equals either of these values, only one needs to pass, then I want to run some code. And that code is simply going to be a console log that says, hello, friend. Perfect. Next up, maybe someone I don't like so much. For this, I need to use else if. Else if is else space if on the same line as the closing curly braces. And then we have our condition again. If the name is equal to Chet. If the name is equal to Chet, I'm going to use console log inside of my curly braces to say console log, hey. Lastly, if I don't know the person, I'm going to be using the else clause. Right after the else keyword, I can add my opening and closing curly braces, and inside of the code block, I'm going to run console.log hey stranger. There we go. Perfect. Once you save the file, run it in the terminal. Here you can see hello friend prints to the screen. That's because the first condition passes, so none of the other conditions are even considered. If name equals to Mike, that's true, or name is equal to Jen, that's false. That passes because one of them is true. Now in the next statement, we have an else if. If name is equal to Chet, I want to say hey. I'm going to set the name equal to Chet, rerun the program, and you can see hey prints out to the screen. Last up, if I don't know the person, I'm going to go with Julie, and I rerun the program. You can see hey stranger prints to the screen because the name doesn't equal to Mike or Jen, so this statement doesn't print. The name is also not equal to Chet, so this statement doesn't print. Finally, the default statement runs hey stranger. Very cool. If statements are the thing that makes programming languages work. They let you run dynamic code based on different values. So if a value is this, I want to run this code. Else, if a value is that, I want to run that code. We're going to be using them a ton through the course. If you're a little uncomfortable with the logic so far, don't worry. It doesn't get any harder than true and false. We're going to be breaking it down as we go, so just pay attention, work through the exercises, and I promise you'll get the hang of it. I'll see you in the next video where we're going to start getting into something I think you're going to like.